lining pieces. So we need to get the back lining pieces next, which is piece 21. So again, you should have marked all your notches, and I did put a couple of little tailor's tacks in just where it marked my size for the pleat on there, and also same size for there. Although it does say in the instructions where to stitch to as well, so if you haven't put them in, don't worry. I just thought it would be easier. Pin left somewhere, there we go, there it is. Okay, move that to one side. Snip that tailor's tack there. And same at the bottom. Okay, and it wants us to sew the pleat into the back. So you have a pleat in the lining often, just gives that a bit more ease on the jacket. Where's my other notch? There it is. So you just line up your two notches at the bottom of the jacket, of the lining there. And I'm going to line up my two little tailor's tacks that I've made there. So one in there, one in there, there. And I'll do the same at the top. So lining up my two notches that I marked at the top of the pattern. And then my two tailor's tacks I put in here. I get them lined up, one there, one not quite, one there. There we are, like so. Okay, and then I'm going to stitch from the notch there down to the tailor tack, and from the notch there up to the tailor tack at the bottom. Okay, and then I need to press that towards the, just says press the fold, so it goes one way or the other. It's showing it going towards the left on the instructions. So I'm going to go and stitch that and then press that pleat in place like so when I've stitched it. Okay, and then we have to, okay, so that's the pleat sewn in the back, down the back there. I've also, so I've pressed it towards, I've pressed it flat, so it's folded towards, I did it towards the, I think now, left. So, and then I've just basted the ends in place along the seam line there, just to help hold that in place. Next it wants you to do the pleats on the hem here, so I've pinned that one. So it's just finding your notches, which is not easy on this fabric. There we are, there and there, I think, yes. So fold that like that. Another one in there, sit that flat. And then it wants us to stitch up about 3 centimetres up there. So I'm just going to put a little mark in, another pencil probably on this fabric. So about 3 centimetres up. Up to about there. And the same on that one. About there. So I'm going to stitch those and then press them towards, then it says press them towards the centre back. Now I'm just going to baste them in place like I have done the top ones here. And then we need to join the fronts to the back. Okay, so that's those stitched and basted in place. So literally just stitching from the hemline, small seam up there to 3 centimetres. Make sure you back stitch, and then I've just pressed it towards the centre front and then base stitched that in place. So that's those there. So now we just need to join the front to the back. Notches and the gathers, yes. Right, okay. Oh, it's such a cold day today. Really dull out there today. So we just need to join the fronts to the backs at the shoulder seams and the side seams. So that one on there, that one on there. Match up the shoulder seams first. So my lining fabric's quite fine, so what I'm going to do is stitch my seams, overlock them, and then overlock them together, and then press them to one side. As I say, if your linings, I probably will, because this will want to fray, this fabric, but if your fabric's not fraying, you don't have to neaten, overlock, or your edges really, because it's a lining, so it will all be enclosed. But because this fabric just wants to fray a bit, it's just a fabric I had in my stash to use up. So just going to pin that one to there as well. Mobile this fabric. Come on, go there. No, don't go there then. Doesn't want to stay when I put it. Right, gotcha. Okay. Okay, and then the same with the side seams. So as I say, right sides together. Join your side seam there. Okay, and then just I'll do the same with this side seam here. I'm going to stitch those, and then I think we have to put the collar on the other side of the collar, so we'll do that next. So that's the so that's this lining bodice piece sewn together. I've done the side seams and the shoulder seams, so now we just need to attach the other half of your collar piece, interface collar piece, to the lining. So I'm just gonna, again, just much like we did, the same as we did with the other, with the main body of the jacket. We're gonna put the notches at the shoulder seams. Where is it? There it is. That one there. Lining fabric's quite fine, right? And then I'll do this one next. Line that up in the middle. So just pin that in place, making sure it's all set flat. My lining's quite fine, so I'm going to put quite a few pins in here just to try and keep it lined up. I don't want it all sort of getting any puckers in the lining on the collar if I can help it. I'll put a few more in there because it's quite fine, it just wants to move about everywhere. stash, so I think that will do. Right, so then we're going to join the side, join it up at the point at the centre, or at the front there, with the collar there. Fiddly, right, and that there. A bit fiddly only because my lining fabric's quite fine. Right, and that one there. Again, join the side, corners at the front there. Oops, back on view. There. And again, ease it. So just easing it in at the centre. Pin it. I'll put a couple in here because it's on a curve. As I say, my fabric wants to move about everywhere. There we go. And then 1, 2 in there. 1, 2. Okay, so I'm going to stitch that on, and then we need to I'm going to press the seam allowance downwards like we did before, so it'll be like that. And then we're going to put the sleeves together and insert the sleeves into the lining, and then we join it all together with the jacket. But I'm just going to sew this bit, then I must just grab some lunch because I've got a sewing class this afternoon. So yeah, we'll probably do a bit more this evening. Okay. So those. Okay, so that's one sleeve in, so I'll show you how we did that. So we've sewed our sleeve seams together like so. Okay, so they're sewn. And then you want your sleeve the right way out, the body of your lining the wrong way out, like so. And then you just get your centre underarm seam and line that up with your underarm seam in the body of your lining. Pin that there. Then you'll have a notch at the top of your sleeve head, and you want to pin that to your shoulder seam up there like so. Oh. Mobile, this fabric, right. And then once you've got your sleeve like that, so I need to turn it around sideways, then you've got notches on the side here. I don't seem to have on here. The notch hasn't come through on there, but that's fine. I know from the other one it fits quite nicely. So you have a notch on your the bodice, the back bodice, that lines up with the where's it gone? With this seam here. Okay, but I must obviously haven't snipped mine enough. I know it lines up pretty straight up to there, and then you've got a little bit of ease from there to the shoulder. Sorry, just let me put my phone on silent, it's pinging away. Oh, itchy nose. So just line that up. So you will have a notch. Mine just hasn't snipped through on my fabric. It did on the other side, but obviously not on this side. I know that lines up fairly straight to there. This fabric's so fiddly. Right. Another one in there. Right. So between, oh, fell off. Okay, so then between there and there, I've just got a little bit of ease to go. So just that bit in the middle there. Again there. Okay, and then around the other side, you'll have a notch here on your front, the arm side, and then a notch on your sleeve there. So pin that one in place. Pin in between. So I'm going to sew this other sleeve in, and then we're going to join it, the two pieces of the lining to the jacket, and it joins together on this pattern at the collar. So we'll do that first. We'll do that next. So again, a bit of ease here. So just pin it in the centre. Centre there, and then the centre there again. Just distributing that ease evenly. Okay, and you could tack that in if you prefer, or I'm just going to sew it with the pins because I'm quite confident at it. But if any doubt, just tack that in, and then you can always check the position of it and everything first. So I'm going to go and stitch that and overlock it like I did the other one, and then we'll attach the lining to the jacket at the collar as the instructions say. Okay, so that's the other sleeve sewn in. So both sleeves are sewn into the lining now. Okay, so both those are sewn in. So next it wants us to attach the collar of the lining to the collar of the jacket. So it just wants you to put both collars together along the top edge. So one on there. Just pin both ends first. And then we're just going to sew along this top edge only. So it's quite unusual how it goes together. Put that there. So both your collar pieces are interfaced just to give it some strength. Okay, so pinned along the top there, so we're just going to sew all the way along the top there, and then it wants us to turn it over, press it, and then we're going to stitch this and this together to what they call seal the collar, so like so. So we'll sew along the top first there, and then I'll show you what's next. Okay, so that's pressed over to the right side. Okay, we've got right sides together there now. Then we want to see if I can do this to show you. Hold your lining back, and then we want to stitch both these seam allowances together. So let me pin that and I'll show you. So we want the seam allowance from the collar of your jacket and the seam allowance from the collar of your lining, and we're going to stitch those two together. So just make sure you line up your shoulder seams there. Another shoulder seam there. Trying to see where I am. That way. So, pin in between, just adjust that later. Pin that together. And then it just wants you to stitch not quite up to the seam, just so that you're stitching these seams together, so it just holds the collar together really. So about 0.5 centimetres from your previous stitched seam. I'm going to pin in. There we go. Oh, there we go. That must be a blunt one. It's a blunt one. That's going to like it. Okay, and then joining up the edges here. And then this, the raw edge of your collar then gets caught into the button band that goes on a bit later. So it all gets sealed in. Line that up. So on there, and then just join these two ends up here. I'll show you when I've pinned it all, so you can hopefully see it a bit clearer. If you could like or comment and subscribe, then that would be great. I can keep these videos going. Just do them to see if they help someone sewing their projects really. Yeah. So that's it all pinned in place. That's the two collars pinned there. So if I show you like that, it will make more sense. So that's it pinned. There's your collar, right sides out, and we've just pinned the two seam allowances of the collar together there. So I'm going to stitch along there, and I'll show you what we've done, and then that'll probably be it for today. I'll go and see my daughter, and the grandchildren. So I'm going to stitch that in place first, and I'll show you. Right. So that's that all stitched together. So I'll show you there. So that's all stitched together along that inside collar seam. So next it'll be attaching the sleeves together, I think, but I will have to do that another day. Yeah, next is attaching the sleeves, and then we do the placket, and then we do the bottom band. But I'll just put this in for the sleeves. So that's our jacket so far. So it's coming along. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so next it's to do the sleeve hems, as I say, attaching those, and then we're going to do the front placket, and then we do the bottom band on the jacket, which has some little gathers at the front, and then we've got the pleats at the back. Okay, so I'll do them either this evening or tomorrow to continue with the video. Have a good day. Okay, so we've got the collar all sewn in, so now it's to do the sleeves, attach the lining of the sleeves to the jacket. So I'm just going to turn these wrong sides out. So we need to, excuse me if I'm sounding a bit croaky today, but I've just got a bit of a cold, so a bit nasally and croaky today. So we're going to get these, so to line them up, I usually lay them out like this, so I know I've got them straight. I can actually find my sleeve, that's it, there we go. So I've got the underarm sleeve like so on the lining there, and then I've got the underarm there. So with those two together, just line those up. So temporarily I'm just going to pin that in place there, so I know I've got those two together, because it's quite easy to get them twisted when you're fitting them together like this. So if you line it up like that, pin that together first, then you know you've got them together. Okay, so then we want to put this one inside that one. So let's find that seam there first. Let's pin that in place. It's got two pins there. So you're just folding the sleeve lining, so you're tucking it inside the sleeve. So now I've just got to undo that pin that I put in place to keep that underarm seam marked. I can find it. There it is. Oh, that's just come off. Put that back on. Look at that pin properly. There we go. I'm trying to show you as I go. Which way is that one going? That way. Try and keep your seam allowances facing the same way on your cuff as it is in your arm side of your whole seam. So just pin that in place around there. And there. Show you when I've done this, it's difficult to show you close up at the same time as pinning it. Hopefully you can see. Move it round to the centre. There. Okay, so that's pinned in place. So your sleeve lining is just, I'll show you it like that, it's just tucked inside there. So you've got right sides together on your sleeve seams, and you've lined up your underside sleeve seam and the other seam on your cuff all the way around. So we'll do the same with the other one. I'm going to stitch that at a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then we'll turn it all in the right way. And next I think we do the placket. Okay, so we've sewn, oops, twisted. So I've sewn together around these sleeve hems here, and I've also overlocked. You don't have to, but it's just my fabric tends to want to fray a bit, so I've decided to do that. So then you just reach inside of your outer sleeve and just pull that through, and your sleeve should poke through, hopefully without too much lining attached to it. There we go, should just sit through. Okay, so your sleeve hem will naturally turn up the right amount, and then you can give that a press, so that just turns up inside like so. Now it doesn't tell you to do this on the jacket, but I prefer to do it. I've done it on other jackets. So just to tether the lining to the jacket here at the arm side, sometimes it's a good idea just to attach it. So just stitch just to your seam allowance of your underarm seam there. As I say, it doesn't say to do this, but it's just something I prefer to do. It just helps keep your lining in place and stop it moving about in the arm side. Just a few stitches there. I've done it recommended in other jackets, so I'll do the same on this one. So just a few stitches in place there, and then just get your equal, make sure I've got the right one, equal underarm seam. Yeah, that's it, that one. So again, just onto the seam allowance. Okay, and the thread, you don't want it completely tight, you just want to allow a little bit there, you see what I mean, a little bit there just to give a little bit of room for movement, but just keeps it a little bit. Put a couple of stitches in there, and back to the other side. Oops. And back to there. Show you in a minute what I've done. Okay, so it's just like that. Okay, and then just do another stitch in there just to hold that in place. And then I'm just going to do a little blanket stitch, a kind of like you do for a buttonhole, for a button, like a belt loop or whatever, rather not a buttonhole. Just a few of those on the end there. Now you could do that all the way along, but I don't think that's necessary. I just tend to do one on that side and then just take it across to there, and then just do a couple that side. Just threading it through like that. So you could do that all the way along if you wanted to, like you would for a belt loop. I don't think that's necessary, it's just inside, it's just to create that tethered bit. So you've got the lining of your arm, underarm seam tethered to the lining of your jacket, and then just stitch another couple of stitches just to secure that off. Cut the thread off, in there, put that in there. Okay, and then you've just got that tethered like that on your underarm seam, so it just helps keep that all in place in your jacket. And you don't see anything obviously from the inside there. So yeah, so that's all in place. A bit of a shake. Okay, so then we need to press the ends of those sleeves, sleeve hems, which I'll do in a minute. And the next bit is to do the button band. So, okay, so take that off. I've marked my, so I have interfaced it and I've marked my buttonhole button placement on there. And I've also put a pin which marks the top. So I'm going to do the same with, oh, done the same with that side. Okay, so let's just separate these off. So we've got tailor's tacks on both sides. Okay, so fluffy. Right, so we're doing it from the lining side first. Okay, so it's a bit mobile, my lining. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go along and baste this lining along this seam so that it's going to make it easier to fix. I'm going to pin that in place along there, down to there. Okay, so I'm just going to go and base stitch that in place within the seam allowance just to hold those two layers together, as then we are going to place this bit onto there like so, which will then fold over onto the right side. So I'm going to go and baste that in place, this side and the other side, and then we'll fix that on. Okay, so I've just base stitched those together just with a long basting stitch on my machine, just so that they stay together there. So then we just need to pin the right side of your button band piece to the lining side of your jacket. So I've done that side, I'll show you what I do with this side. Okay, so the top piece of your it goes here, but I've lost my notch. It goes there. It's marked my notching, disappeared. Okay, so the notch, you should have a notch at the top. It's on here on your pattern. Okay, and there. So that notch at the top lines up with the seam where your collar joins. So that notch lines up with the seam here that you've sewn for your collar. So you will have an overlap at the top of the collar, but you don't at the bottom. You don't at the bottom hem, but you do at the collar piece here, because we will need to fold that up, fold that over. That should be about 1 centimetre roughly. So we'll fold that, that gets folded over in a moment once we've stitched it. Then you'll have a notch there, which joins with the notch there. Place. And then you've got your notch there that joins with the notch there. So that sits, that lines up at the bottom. Sorry, move over. That lines up at the bottom there, like so. Okay, so you've matched your notches. Now you just need to even it out and pin in between. So we're going to stitch down here. I am going to overlock it because, as I say, my lining wants to fray a little bit, so it's just getting in the way. Although it's not going to be seen, it's all going to be encased, so you don't necessarily have to. It's just to stop my lining fraying a little. And just prolong the life of it, really. So yeah, all a good thing. So I pin this in place here. Oops. Okay, we've got the top of the band up that end and the lower of the band down that end. So the top end goes up by the collar, that end goes down there. Okay, so I'm gonna stitch down there a centimetre seam allowance, and then I am going to overlock it, and then we're going to press the seam over, fold it over and under to the other side. Okay, so I'll do that and I'll come back. Okay, so we've stitched that down there and I have overlocked, so that's the seam there, joining those two together. Then it just wants you to press it with your seam allowance facing towards the placket, and then iron over a centimetre, which is your seam allowance, down that side there, and then also turn over a centimetre at the top there, and then that just folds over like so to join, just to overlap your, just tuck that in there, overlap, just so that it overlaps your sewn seam from before. So we're just going to pin that in place. Which way am I going to go? Okay, so I'm going to pin that in place down there. It's difficult to see my stitched seam. There. Okay, so I think I'm going to tack that in place just to make sure I get it lined up exactly right along there and along the top, to make sure that sits right. And then then it wants you to top stitch down that side, yeah, just down that side, I think. Yeah, down that side and along the top. But I think I will probably do down the other side as well, just to make it look neater, otherwise it'll be just along the top and down. So I'm going to go all the way round on my placket, and then next we're going to do the bottom band. So we'll do those and then we'll come back to do the bottom band. Okay, so we've stitched, get this one out of the way. So we've stitched down our front up. I've gone up and around. It does tell you just to go up and across the top, but I decided to go all the way around my button placket. So that's those sewn on both sides. Okay, now I then decided to go round and baste together my lining to my jacket. So on the instructions it says you've got a little bit to gather at the front, but my lining's nice lightweight and it's not going to make it overly bulky to gather it up together. I think if you've got thick fabric then you'd need to gather it separately, but mine's okay. So I've basted all that together along the bottom line there, so it's easier to fit and then put in place. Then I've gathered between the two notches on the front pieces here. Okay, so I've done 2 lines of machine gathering there, so I've just done a long stitch and I'm going to pull those up together and fit where I want it to. And then both the, they call it the belt, so it's the bottom band of your jacket. Now it's got a curved edge, which you can see there, I think just about, and a straight edge. Now all along the straight edge on both pieces, you've got 2 pieces, both of which are interfaced. And you just need to, along the straight edge, you need to fold over a centimetre seam allowance. Okay, not along the curved edge. The curved edge is the side we're going to fit to the jacket. Then it's going to be folded, both edges are going to be folded over and these 2 straight edges stitched together. So I'm going to line, let's turn my jacket around right sides up. Do it this side first. So I'm going to line up the centre of my jacket, which I'm just going to check exactly is where, which is there, with that notch. So we're going to line the centre of that up there, like so. So that's right sides together of your piece and then you've got a notch here. Now that's going to line up with your pleat by the looks of it. And the next notch lines up with your side seam. Assuming I got all this in the right place. Find my side seam there, hidden in the velvet. There we go. In there like so. So I'm just going to pin that in between. So pinning one side initially, then in a minute we're going to need to pin the other side to it. So the bottom hem of your jacket basically is sandwiched between the two of these. But we put one on first and then do the other one. Oh no, that's gathered in, isn't it? Okay, so that must overlap. To give a turn. Yep. So when you get to the end here, this bit must overlap. Okay, so that you've got enough to turn under. Okay. So we're gonna, and there's a notch there that lines up with the notch of there. Pin that. A little bit easy there. Let's just move that together. So pin that in place. Okay, and then we'll pin it to the start of the gather. So there's another notch there that lines up with a notch that starts on your where it's going to be gathered. I'll show you that closer up. I'll just get this bit pinned, this half pinned. I'll do it's quite lengthy to pin this, so I'll pin half of it and show you, and then do the other half separately. So we've got this there like this, and this is where the gathers are. So we're just going to pull our stitches at the back here. A little bit from that side, and then I do a little bit from this side. Okay, so it's pretty even. Just making sure your gathers are pretty even, and we can pin that in place. And there. Okay, so that's all pinned in place. So I've done halfway round from the waistband. Then obviously you go round and do the full half the other side. But I'll just show you then what we need to do is then sandwich your other piece of your waistband to the other side. So just matching it up at the ends there. I'm going to repin that. Making sure you're keeping it fairly well even. So as I say, if you can baste your lining layers together, it will make it easier at this point. So again, line up your notches with your other notches. Pin all that together. Centre notch, there it is. Pin that together, make sure we get them even there. Just making sure you've got all those layers in there. So again, pin that, then we're going to sew along here with a centimetre seam allowance. So centimetre seam allowance throughout the whole jacket, so that's handy. It doesn't keep changing at any point like on some patterns, so that's good. Oh, I've got that quite lined up right. Hang on. That's it. Just make sure you don't lose your centre bit seam inside. So that's it, sandwiched it all together there. One more. So you've got quite a few layers here. You may need to change your needle on your machine depending on what needle you've got in. I've got an 80 or a 90, so hopefully I'll see how it goes. I may need to change my needle up. So we're going to stitch along there, and then in a minute those two will both fold down, and then we stitch those together. That's why we've turned under those edges. Okay, so I'm going to pin the rest of this around here. We'll stitch that, and then I'll come along and show you what we do next. Okay, so we've stitched all that round, and I have just overlocked mine just because, as I say, my lining wants to fray. So then once that's all like that, then you just need to fold over both your pieces so that they join together, so that these two pressed under edges join together, and then we just need to pin that in place there. So do that all the way round. I'll show you on one half, and I will go stitch it like so. And then at the ends, you just need to tuck those ends under. So it is a bit bulky there, so I'm just going to trim that corner off a wee bit there, just to allow that to fold over a bit better, like so. Pin in that bit. And then turn over these two ends, like so. Okay, so like that all the way around. Okay, I might just run a tack-in stitch around mine just to make sure I've got these edges nicely lined up together, and then I'm going to stitch that in place. Now it does ask you just to stitch down that edge there at the end of your placket and around the bottom, but I am also going to go around the edge, this edge, so I'm going to go all the way around, much like I did with the placket bit here. So I'll do that, and then I'll show you where we are next, and it's just buttons and buttonholes. Okay, so I've sewn all around the hem. It's like a waistband really around the belt, as they call it. the bottom of the jacket. Now I did miss top stitching from that side. I did miss on a couple of places the underneath bit there, but I've just hand sewn that in place. I'm quite happy with that. So next of all, we're going to do the buttonholes. So we've got them marked from our tailor's tacks. I was going to use these buttons, but then I decided I'd quite like to go with something with a bit more colour. So I found these little wooden buttons, and as they're not going to be, it's not going to be overly washed as a jacket, so I thought they went quite nice. So I usually lay the buttons on. I've lost one. To see what they look like, and then go with that. All the other ones in my buttonhole thing. So yeah, so I'm going to go with doing my buttonholes for those, and then sew the buttonholes on, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay. Well, I'll do the buttonholes actually, and then I'll show you how I cut through the buttonholes. I've done that before in a previous video, but I'll show that again on this one. Okay. Okay, so I've sewn the buttonholes on. Oops. And there. That's the tail. Right. So I've sewn my buttonholes. The ones along the button band go vertically, and then the one along the one at the bottom on the belt piece goes horizontally. So my preference is to use a buttonhole cutter, and I usually put a bit of fray check on first, which I've done, just giving it a minute to dry. So then we just need to cut the buttonholes. So let's start at the top this end, make sure that's in view. So with the buttonhole cutter, you just need to align. Oops, there you want it, and then put some pressure on to cut through. And then I'll just, because I've got quite big buttons, I just need to move it along slightly. Press down there. There we go, that's that one done. Just do one more for you to show you. So you just align it up. You can see, align it up there. Push down on. Line it up there. Push down. There we go. And it just makes a nice clean buttonhole. Okay, so I'm going to do those other few, and then I'm going to sew my nice coloured buttons on to my other side, and then yeah, I'll hopefully get some photos tomorrow of it finished and upload the video for you. Thanks, Em.